All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our panel. So for those who don't know me, my name is Alicia Mandak. I am one of the career coaches here at the Fung Institute. We are so excited to have our group of panelists here to revisit our conversation about hiring and employment trends. So we did one of these back in summer 2021, and I can actually put in the chat for those of you who maybe weren't able to join us then or want to revisit that conversation. We'll put that in the chat. This is the second part, and we thought it was important to do a second part because of just what we're seeing within the industry and the kind of ups and downs that we're seeing, particularly within the tech industry. So we're so lucky to have our panelists here with us today. So before we go into the introductions, I just wanted to give you a little bit of overview of what our aim is for today. So we want to discuss the current sort of status, very real time, of what's going on in the tech industry in terms of the hiring and employment landscape. We're going to provide some insight into areas of growth in the industry and how to navigate a change in the job or a challenging job market, and also share some personal stories about career paths, highs and lows, job strategies and tips. So we will have three different themes that our questions will go by. We'll focus on some industry and market trends, the recruitment process, and some general job search strategies. Go ahead and save your questions for the end. We'll have a Q&A session. You can put them in the chat as we go along, and then we'll open it up for some Q&A after we go through the sort of pre-planned questions of our event. So without a further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists, and we have Diony, who's one of my colleagues at the Fung Institute. If you can go ahead and start to do some spotlights of our panelists as we go through these introductions. So first up, we have Brian. Brian attended the MEng program after a few years of work to help learn new skills and enable a career change. He joined Tesla shortly after graduation and grew from an individual contributor to engineering manager in the battery department while he was there. So he was actually fired in 2022, so very much has been a part of this whole ups and downs of the industry and re-entered the job search market, ultimately landing at a startup called Figure, working on batteries for humanoid robots. He spends his spare time hanging out with his wife, fixing the house and skiing around Lake Tahoe. And then next up, we have Ed. Ed received his MSEE degree from Stanford, but his BS and PhD in EECS from UC Berkeley, so the school that matters. Previously, he's held technical and management positions at Broadcom, NVIDIA, and Analog Devices, and currently he's a principal engineer at Qualcomm, leading the RFDAC project for digital transmitters. And then next up, we have Jay. So Jay holds a bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering and worked on gas turbine engine modeling and simulations. He expanded his career pathway by attending the MEng program, majoring in mechanical engineering. Jay started working in the energy industry after graduating from his master's program. And he's currently a mechanical engineer leading a team of 7 in nuclear sensors designed for downhole formation evaluation at SLB. Jay also volunteers at Space Center Houston to spread awareness of human exploration in space, a subject he's passionate about. And work-life balance is important to Jay, as he also enjoys spending time with his wife and 2 boys outside of work. Probably keeps him quite busy. And then lastly, we have Rohan. So Rohan is a Bay Area native and loves driving product innovation from concept to launch. He's held product management and software engineering roles at Google, Lyft, Groupon, and LinkedIn. Armed with experience leading enterprise search at Google and marketplaces at Lyft, Rohan founded Hirefly, which is an AI sourcing platform that connects great talent with great employers at scale. And recently, Hirefly has raised $6.5 million from top-tier Silicon Valley investors and angels, and works with a variety of paid customers ranging from seed stage startups to Fortune 500 organizations. And Rohan holds a BS, a master's degree in EECS from UC Berkeley, and an MBA from Harvard Business School. So welcome to our panelists. I'm going to do a stop share and we'll get everybody spotlighted here. So do we have the spotlight on, Diony? Okay, great. So let me do one other thing, get my notes up here. So welcome so much, panelists. We have our first question, which is that there's been a lot of headlines recently, as we all know, about the tech layoffs. And I'm just wondering, from your perspective and your experience in the industry, what are some headlines that we might not be hearing? So I wanted to open up with that question. And maybe I'm just going to put someone on the spot here. Brian, why don't we start with you and we'll go through each of the panelists.
Sure. After I left Tesla, I got a job at Figure, and I think that sort of highlights my headline that's not being spoken of or not making the news, is that there's a lot of young companies. They're doing a lot of hiring right now. A lot of the larger companies that are fairly established had to lay off people after long hiring sprees, especially through the pandemic. And a lot of small companies now are looking at these really talented employees and snatching them up. And so my headline is small companies are growing, they're growing fast. They're often offering very competitive pay, and they offer an opportunity to be part of a growing team.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. Ed, we'll go to you next with the same question.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So currently, I think that the environment, the macro environment is less favorable. So most of the people just hunker down and do the work. So which is good, because I see a lot of innovation being worked on, and then I think that this is a time where the work is really get done and also get accelerated. So I'm actually very hopeful that we will basically be able to advance from a technology side. We actually will be able to focus and actually basically eliminate a lot of distraction and focus on the core business, and basically getting a lot of work done. So I think on the other side of this downturn, I think there will be a lot of opportunities. Basically, at that time we'll have more innovation, and we will be able to actually grow the team and be able to actually get a very good business. So actually, I'm hopeful. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. So the opportunities for innovation and opportunities at smaller companies that maybe weren't in the spotlight before. All right. So Jay, what about you next?
So living in a post-pandemic world, we're actually seeing a very high demand for energy consumption as people start to traveling again for work, for leisure. So some headlines that from my industry, the energy industry, that you might have missed are news like ExxonMobil, Shell, and Chevron. They just post record high profit from 2022. So most companies in the traditional oil and gas industry is riding this wave of demand and growth. And a lot of companies in this industry is heavily recruiting this season. So I'll definitely recommend looking out for opportunities in all industries, but also in the energy industry, if you could.
Great. Yeah. And Jay will have more to say about that shortly. And Rohan, why don't you round out this question?
Yeah, I just want to echo Brian's point. Startups are very rapidly hiring. And if you look at the VC reports, the seed Series A community in particular, valuations are roughly flat compared to previous times. And so these companies are well-funded. They're not being measured on short-term revenue, and they're tasked with growing, right? So they're still aggressively hiring. You start looking at Series B, Series C, Series D, then the story is very different. And many of those companies too have made layoffs and tough decisions. The other point I'll make is there are a lot of industries outside of tech that hire for tech as functions, right? So for example, we represent a client, JLL, which is a massive commercial real estate organization. They're hiring for software engineers, data scientists, mechanical engineers. Every company needs to do a digital transformation. So be open to those organizations.
Great. Thank you so much. I like that as a tagline here. Industries outside of tech are hiring for tech. So that's a great little tagline. All right, so we will get into our first topic to focus on some industry and market trends. And the first question we're going to focus on are, what are some current trends that you're noticing in your industry in relation to areas of growth? So we're sort of already touching upon this and new opportunities. I'm going to turn it over to Jay. Jay's prepared a slide for us, and give me a second to go back to my screen share here, and we'll turn the question over to Jay to start.
Great. Thank you so much, Alicia. As I mentioned, most oil gas and companies are extremely profitable at this moment, right? We're hiring a ton of new employees. Meanwhile, many of those traditional energy companies are going through transitions. Quite to your surprise, companies, even with ones that produce a ton of carbon footprints, like the one I'm working at, realize the urgency to decarbonize our planet. So if you look at the slide, you see on the left side, it's a graph, it's a figure that made by SLB, my company, to visualize the gigatons of carbon we need to remove from the atmosphere if you want to limit the rise in global warming to only 1.5 Celsius by 2030. And this actually is our new logo when we rebranded from the traditional oil gas company Schlumberger to the new company name SLB. So it shows tremendous amount of dedication that this new energy transformation or this wave of going from the oil and gas to new energy is happening. And also you can see on the right side that I took some screenshots from some major oil companies' main website, and you will see less emphasis on drilling technologies, on lands, on offshore, but pledges on their new mission statement and their goals for sustainability. So the world is changing, and so is the oil and gas industry. And I don't think we can do that without young people supporting it and turning the tide. So I encourage everyone to be part of this change and help us, the oil industry or the overall general energy industry, with this transformation.
Great. Thank you, Jay. So really looking for those waves of change within industries. So same question to you, Ed. What are some areas of growth or new opportunities that you're seeing in your industry?
I work in the electronics industry. The one thing I'm seeing is that the cars are being will be transforming to a cell phone on wheels. So a lot of manufacturers looking for help in putting the electronics into the car, infotainment, communications. So our company do a lot of these type of technologies. So we're seeing a lot of opportunities. So if you like cars, then one potential company to work for is a communication company now, because the car requires a lot of communication and also signal processing. Basically, you have a CPU on your car. So that's actually one big area of growth that our company is working on. And another area of growth is really 5G. Now, the 5G normally people you associate with a cell phone, right? So one thing that is surprising to us is that people are using this 5G technology, particularly the ultra wideband one, very well, like the most high speed one. And instead of using it as a phone, basically they use it as a internet connection. For example, one story we have is that we're seeing a lot of demand in India, right? So they don't have a existing cable network, right? So they cannot have internet. So instead of actually putting coax cable in your town, so they just use the 5G fixed wireless. So it's actually faster than cable modem, right? So we are seeing that it's like a surprise market for us. So that's actually growing as well. So a lot of these technology we're developing, we're finding surprising areas, and that grows, and that's really, it's actually very nice to see that those are actually growth areas.
And that ties into that sort of optimism that you had about the innovation that's happening, and how this sort of tide that we're seeing is also promoting this innovation and kind of following that way.
That's right. Innovation doesn't slow down with the macroeconomic environment. Actually, in the history of electronics, a lot of the best technology are developed during downturns. Like, for example, in the Great Depression, we basically developed all the radio technology, right? So similar things here. In the downturn, a lot of new stuff are being developed.
That's great.
And then good for startups also. Like startups are actually you're very good for in the downturn, because they can hire great people.
All right, so our next question will go with Rohan. So Rohan, your company, I was looking at the website and the kind of premise is that you provide, the companies will provide like 3 ideal candidates for a position, and then you start the sourcing from there and kind of build out their pool of candidates. And so as you're seeing, what people are defining as their ideal candidates, I'm curious, what are some of the experiences that you've noticed that are really in demand, particularly within the tech industry?
Yeah, I think the hot thing right now is machine learning and data science. You guys are probably following ChatGPT and, generative AI, and every VC I'm talking to is talking about, those trends. I think it's fascinating. Certainly our product, our company, it's at its core trying to build the brains of a human recruiter via software. And there are many, many other companies out there that are trying to leverage machine learning to not only automate tasks, but achieve a level of personalization that only a human can, right? But do that at scale. So if I could go back in time, I would have taken a lot more machine learning courses at Berkeley, but that is the hottest skill right now.
Yeah, that ChatGPT. Ooh, talk about headlines. All right, so as we are kind of finding out these sort of different areas of growth and trends, Brian, the question for you is, how can students kind of learn more if they're kind of looking into a specific industry, what those current employment trends are?
Sure. So I've got a few things. Jumping off of the ChatGPT, follow the news. Pay attention to the trends that are reported by the New York Times, the Washington Post. Pick your favorite podcast or news article, pay attention to that. And then secondly, talk to alums. A lot of us are in careers in fun positions. Talk to Rohan. He probably knows a lot about recruiting, both for his company and also for the larger tech sector. Talk to Ed or Jay or myself. If you have other alums, talk to them or reach out through UC Berkeley has a few alum communication platforms. And then third is go to interviews. Even if you're not sure it's like your dream job, go for a lot of reasons. One, interviewing is a skill and practicing helps. And 2, you can ask the recruiter. During the interview, you'll get a chance to ask your own questions. What does the growth opportunities for this company look like? What other roles are you hiring for? Like these sorts of questions, you can get a feel for the sort of company at large and helps you understand the space as a whole. And then the last couple of ways that you can do it are talking to recruiters on LinkedIn. If you can find, if you have a recruiter reach out to you, or if you reach out to a recruiter, you can, maintain those conversations, ask them questions, try to pull answers from anybody you can, and then talk to your UC Berkeley career advisors. You've got Alicia, Dione, and Julia, and they're paying attention to all of it too, and they can always tap into any of the alums that they've worked with in the past and help find answers for specific fields.
Yeah, thank you. Anything else that any of the panelists want to add in terms of this sort of topic of trends, industry, market, and trends? All right. We will keep moving on then. So we'll transition a little bit more to the recruitment process. So Ed, you had a lot of experience in terms of being a hiring manager. And so based on your experience, what would you say are the top 3 most important qualities that you're looking for in a candidate besides the technical skills?
Yeah, that's a very good question. The number 1 skills that we look for is a verbal communication skills. You need to be able to communicate with your team member. So verbal is very important, particularly in the age of virtual, working from home, because most of the people turn off the video, right? So you just have audio, and then you have to be able to communicate with voice, right? So that's the number 1 skill, right? Second skill is the presentation skills, because usually we do IC chip, like chip design. We are chip designers, so we design ICs, and then we need to present our design to the other management, the other technical members of the team, maybe different groups. You have to be able to present well, and if you cannot present well, then basically your career will be limited, right? So the third thing is that we look for is being a team player, basically you need to be able to work with others. Now you might ask the question, how can we tell a person whether he's a team player or not with maybe a one-day interview with different team? Well, the way we screen it out is like this. We will have a team to interview with the candidate. And then if any one of the interview did not go well, did not go smoothly, then we reject the candidate. The fundamental reason is that there are multiple candidates typically, and then basically we just don't want to take the chance. So the advice is that you don't want to piss people off. I mean, when you interview, okay, no matter what the interview asks the question, you need to answer politely, and you need to provide a good response. If you don't know, you can say you don't know, but do not piss people off. If you piss people off, that guy is going to say bad things about you, and automatically you are going to be rejected. So yeah, play nice. Yeah, play nice in the interview process, and you have a good chance of getting hired.
Yeah, building those connections with people. We might have gotten another headline from this from this panel here.
Yeah.
So this really ties into the different skills that students are gaining from the MEng program. So Rohan, both from your experience as an MEng alum, but also again, what you're seeing from the work that you do, what do you think are the most marketable skills that students are gaining from the MEng program?
Well, first off, Berkeley is an amazing brand, right? It'll get your foot in the door with a bunch of employers. Right off the bat, it's a great signaling mechanism. Then I think beyond that, the way the MEng program is constructed, I was the first cohort, so it's probably changed a ton. But I really like the leadership aspect. You have to be well-rounded. And I know that most of the companies that we represent will have culture and just general sort of communication skills as very, very important criteria in their rubric. So I think that's where the MEng program can help you stand out relative to other engineering candidates.
Yeah, and I should have mentioned that, Rohan, that you are one of from the founding program, so one of the OGs, if you will. All right, so we'll go to a question that I actually get asked quite a bit in my career coaching sessions, and it's going to be great to hear perspectives from the panelists here about the ways to get your resume or application notice. You know, Ed had said that they have tons and tons of applicants. And so what are some strategies to make sure that your resume or application is getting noticed? And so Brian, we'll start with you.
All right. So top few that I had were get a referral if you can. Find somebody that knows somebody, right? Work your network, your alumni, your friends. They can go a long ways to your resume being one in a pile of many papers to your resume being one that the recruiter's actively looking at because they were told to look at it. Another one is if you can find that company in person, whether it be a UC Berkeley career fair or a trade show, or you can go to the company has an event where you can go. Like those are great ways to get noticed and talk to people, and mention that you have an interest in working there, and hand them your resume or your business card. And then the third one is when you send it, if you are sending in sort of a blind resume without one of those options, having like a portfolio that goes with it helps a lot too. So instead of just sending the resume, it's like one page, it's some text, it's mostly dry. It's like making sure you check the boxes so that I know you're the right applicant, like you can do the job, but I also want to know who you are as an applicant. So a portfolio that shows the work you've done, the projects you've been a part of, sort of what you're interested in type of thing. And that goes a long ways too. And I really enjoy looking through those, and will often spend extra time reviewing a portfolio, much more than I would spend if someone had just sent a resume in.
Great. And Jay, what about you? What are some additional strategies here for getting the resume or application noticed?
So I think Brian had it all covered. He had some really good strategies. I'll definitely echo his point that trying to get your network game going and get referred by someone within the company that you wanted to work for is the most effective way to get your application in front of the right person, the right HR or the right manager. Most companies that I'm aware of trust the recommendation of their own employees. So if someone has worked with you before and that person knows your work ethic and the skill set that you possess, make sure they remember that. Make sure you remind them that, and then that will increase your chance of getting an interview and getting an offer. And especially I want to emphasize that you should utilize the alumni network that we have at Berkeley. It's a great resource. Reach out to individuals in your dream company, and even on LinkedIn that this complete stranger you have never met, but reach out to them if you believe you share some comments with them, and that would be a good opportunity for you. Just remember that there's always, well, in most cases, there's a financial incentive for the employees also to refer you. Like the company pays out incentive in cash or other type of rewards. So don't be shy to reach out. They're happy to help you, and you don't want to lose the opportunity.
Yeah. And I'm curious, just Ed or Rohan, since this is a question that we just get asked so much, if there was anything else that you'd want to add to this question about how to get that resume or application noticed.
Yeah, I can jump in. We write algorithms for this, right? So, I think some folks have touched on this. If you can identify the job poster for an open job, that's the person who's feeling the pain with filling that open job. We use this as a scoring signal for our sales lead gen, but it's the same thing if I'm a candidate, go after whoever that job poster is. And LinkedIn jobs will typically have this section filled out. You can just kind of scroll through and find out who that individual is. If they don't have it filled out, just do some sleuthing, just look for who the functional director is, director of engineering, director of mechanical engineering, whatever your function is, and just email that person or InMail that person. There's a bunch of tools to help find work emails. I highly recommend apollo.io. You can just feed in a LinkedIn profile. It'll spit out the work email address for that person. Hit them up, write them a good email. I'm pretty sure they're going to respond.
Great tip.
Okay, so for our industry, we make the computer IT chip, right? So there is a process to tape out corresponding to kind of, you finish the design, you send it to a fab like TSMC or Samsung, for example. So we look for candidates who has tape out experience. Basically, like suppose you in your past experience, you work on some projects, and if you have some tape out experience, highlight that, because we look for people who has gone through this process, because the tape out is very tough, and then and we want people to actually have experienced it before, right? Have that experience and be able to bring that experience to their new job. So if you have tape out experience, please highlight that the first line. Okay, because a lot of the times we reject candidates because no tape out. Because if you don't have any tape out, then you are just like the rest of the 95% of the population who they have not taped out, right? So that's automatically screened out. So you want people who have taped out. If you have it, please put it on. Highlight is the first item.
Yeah, and I think the larger principle there is highlighting the things that are relevant to the job that you're applying to, the skills that you developed that are relevant, and then not just relying on that piece of it, but then finding the people, like Rohan was saying, actually all you were saying, finding the people and talking to them, finding them in person, so that you're not just necessarily relying on the paper to do the job, but you're having all those strategies around it. So awesome. Thank you for all of that. So we'll move on to our sort of last section before open Q&A. And I just want to invite and remind people that you can put your questions in the chat for our panelists. After we finish these sort of predetermined questions, we'll open it up to the group, and we're keeping track of what's already been submitted. So feel free to keep submitting those in the chat and we'll get to those. So our last section here is just sort of that general job search that I know a lot of our students are currently in. And Brian, you recently just went through your own job search. And so I'm curious about what advice you would have for someone that's maybe shifting into a different career, or maybe just even different roles or different industries. And particularly, feel free to also share what your current experience has been like to offer people some insight.
Sure, I'll share both my experiences switching jobs. My first job was a pizza oven design engineer. I did that for 3 years on the East Coast and had a pretty significant transition to switching to a battery engineer for electric vehicles on the West Coast. And I achieved that through UC Berkeley, actually. I had applied to Tesla before UC Berkeley and they said, no, we're not interested. And so school is my first one in transitioning. You guys are all in UC Berkeley now, so you're right on the fence of being able to jump into really any career path you want. Coming out of school is one of the most flexible times when employers will not worry as much about your past experience being a perfect fit because they know you've just come from schooling where you've learned how to learn. And that's a really powerful place. So coming from school, I couldn't, like I said, I applied to Tesla and was rejected the first time. I couldn't have made it into Tesla without going to UC Berkeley and studying advanced energy and being on the West Coast, I think helped a lot too. And then my second career switch was slightly less of a jump. I'm still doing battery engineering here at Figure, but a very different product line. And I achieved that through my network. I knew the founder of the company from previous work. And when he started this new company, he reached out and said, hey, we're interested. It was right around the time I had gotten fired, so it was perfect. My second career switch was easier than my first, and this is general feedback I'll give you all as well, is it's harder to find careers when you're younger, and the job search gets easier as you get older. And so not to be sort of dismayed if you don't get your dream job right off the bat. That was sort of my case for Tesla, was they said no the first time. And I got more experience. I worked for another year at the oven company and then went back for a year of schooling. So with experience, your network grows, and with experience, your own sort of attractiveness as an employee grows, and it can make that job switch easier. So my second advice for job switching is rely on your network. And then my last two that aren't directly applicable to me, but I've seen these work really well, are internally transferring within a company. So if you already work for a company, they know you're a good employee, they want you to be happy. And if you mention that you're not satisfied in your current role and you'd like to try something new, they're much more likely to take a chance on you in that new role than if you try to go to a new company, and the new company is like, well, we don't know who you are and we don't know you you have no experience in this role. That's a harder sell than to a company you already work for saying, you know who I am, you know I'm a hard worker, I'd like to transfer my skills to this other role that's adjacent to it. So internal transfers can be a really good way to switch careers as you go, especially between things like if you're interested in program management or engineering, you can bounce back and forth between those two. If you're interested in individual contribution or management, I've known people at Tesla that have become managers of large teams and then a couple of years later said, this isn't what I want to do, and step back down to being very highly paid individual contributors for Tesla. And then the last thing I'll say out there is certificates or boot camps can often help build a skill set that's adjacent to the work you've done in school and help show employers that you're serious about taking on the extra effort to learn skills that you don't have. Those are my four suggestions for switching careers.
That's great. Yeah. And taking those kind of always growing, always learning kind of perspective, and really appreciate that view of, or that offer of remembering that your dream job doesn't necessarily happen right away, and that as you get more experience, the job search experience also becomes a lot different. So thank you for that. And at another time, I'd want to know your opinion about pizza versus on the East Coast versus the West Coast. East Coast. I would imagine so, yeah. All right, so we'll move on to something that is also a really pretty common question. So we have a percentage of our students that go straight from undergraduate to graduate programs, and so don't necessarily have that full-time work experience. And so what skills should somebody who's kind of gone directly from undergraduate to graduate highlight to make them a competitive candidate? And Rohan, we'll start with you there.
I would say personal projects, especially in software engineering, which is my field. I want to see you can hack, right? There's only so much that I can glean from a scholastic record. And a lot of candidates are going to have good GPA, good degrees, good school, but show me you built something. Show me you got some users. Show me you just were creative, right, in your free time.
Yeah, those projects really do give a lot of great experience to highlight on their resume. Ed, what else would you say folks should highlight if they don't have full-time work experience to make them competitive?
Yeah, I have a recommendation. Actually, the first most effective is to get an internship with the company. For example, a large company typically have an internship, like the company I work for. We have an internship program, right? So it's only for the summer, so it doesn't impact your regular study. So before you graduate, the summer before you graduate, you should look for an internship, right? And if you have an internship and then you do well, actually, most of the time we will hire you for full time. But we want to, because it is a company-funded kind of activity, so that we will identify good candidates. So it's actually easy way in. Yeah. And then also the internship is easier to get. Full-time position is harder to get from a financial, budget-wise, it's harder. But the internship, because it's a short duration, it's easy to get a internship. So there are more internship positions. Actually, most of the time, we are waiting for candidates for the internship. It's kind of like, it's not like, it's the other way around. We're chasing candidates for the internship. So you have a good chance to get it. Like, so for example, yeah. Okay, so the internship is number one. The second one I would recommend is that if you are in school, you want to do some kind of a research project with a professor. For example, you usually have this undergraduate research. In my days, there's some, you can take some with a class with a few units, and you identify a professor, and they give you a PNP grading. So pretty much everybody pass, right? So advantage is that you want to get into a research lab for a well-known professor, right? And because the well-known professor knows a lot of people, right? And then particularly the people who's actually in industry about the same age as the professor. So they will know a lot of people. And then if the opportunity comes up, then he can refer you to the job. And also, if you basically get a referral from the professor, it's very strong. Basically, if you look at a resume and you say, oh yeah, this guy worked with this famous professor, automatically you get attention, right? Basically, you have to find a professor who is actually has a well-known in the industry. And how do you know, right? You get undergraduate when you go to the conference and the journals. For example, in the IC design industry, you go to ISSCC, is a conference, and look at who published paper in ISSCC, right? And then you identify the Berkeley has lots of paper in ISSCC, right? So you will find Berkeley professors. You find the good professors, and you basically volunteer in their lab, and then you have a very good chance of getting.
Yeah, so a lot of great experience that people can get while they're students at UC Berkeley, and really highlight that. So our last question to round this out, Jay, this will go to you, just kind of tying everything about getting back to that sort of initial question about sort of the current economic state and the headlines that we're seeing. So what would you say how students should adjust their job searching strategies, just kind of given the current state of what's going on?
Sure. Thank you for the question. I believe that it's important, given the current economic state, it's important for job seekers to be flexible and adapt their job searching strategy. So one approach is to broaden your job search to include industries that are not currently thriving or doing good, even if they're different from your previous experience or your preferences. Just be open-minded. For example, if you have a background in social media and building user interfaces, consider exploring opportunity in industries such as like healthcare, where there's a growing demand for technology solution to connect patients and healthcare providers. You make better, smooth interface for them, happier patients, happier providers, right? And in my experience, when I first graduated from my undergraduate degree, I had a aerospace background, and I was working on computational fluid dynamic analysis for gas turbines. And I realized that that's a very narrow niche where all the people I work with have either been with the company for a really, really long time, and that's all they do their whole career. There's not much dynamic movements. That is one of the motivation that I went to UC Berkeley for my master's in mechanical engineering, so I can have a few more skill sets, and I can look at different industries other than just the aerospace industry. And work for companies with dynamic career path is what I highly recommend it. My current company, SLB, we really encourage employees to move around within the company. You can see people switching to different positions or cross functions within just a few years of their, every few years of their career. So far, I have 3 bosses out of the last 4 years that I worked with this company. Every one of them either got promoted to a different position or they move on to a different function. So it's been fantastic, very encouraging from my company. I feel like I can see myself being in different positions within this company or even in a different corporation. Additionally, definitely update your skills and qualification to meet the demand of those new industry. That would definitely help increase your chance of landing a job. And lastly, tying back to networking, network with someone, not necessarily when you need a job, but stay in touch, informed about the industry trends and the job opportunity that could help increase your visibility and eventually get a success interview.
Awesome, thank you. So much about that transferability of skills to kind of expand into different roles that maybe you didn't think you were first looking into, but kind of looking at the through lines of what are the skills that I have and how do they apply to different opportunities. All right, so we will move to our open Q&A section part of our panel. So again, I'll invite folks here to go ahead and add your questions into the chat and we'll go through them. We did get a couple, so I'll go with the first one that has to do with applicant tracking systems. So this is definitely a conversation that we have with students a lot. And so the question is a question about whether your companies use ATS to filter out candidates, or do you review every single resume? So who would like to start with that?
I'll start from a very small startup side.
Sure.
We're very, very tiny. We don't get a lot of applicants, and so we review all of them.
Okay. Maybe Ed, I'm curious to hear applicant tracking systems.
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, we use a tracking system called Workday. It's a pretty popular tracking system, and for my hires, I do review every single resume. So yeah, sure. If you submit a resume to a job, I post, I will read it myself.
So you're very busy.
So depends on different manager. But then for me, I'm actually I want to basically be able to give everybody the equal chance. So I do read every single resume.
Yeah, and Rohan, I'd be curious to get your input on this.
Yeah, I'll burst the bubble here. There's a lot of companies that use automation to screen. I used to work at Google. They built their own in-house software to do this. There's a company in our space called Eightfold.ai that's probably the leading startup that provides ATS algorithms for scoring candidates. So this stuff happens, and like Brian said, it's really just a function of volume. Google gets millions of applications each year. There's just no way their human sourcers and recruiters would be able to sift through everything. So in terms of how you combat this, certainly they're always checking the algorithms to make sure there's no bias, and you would never train models with gender and ethnicity and things like that as features in your scoring vectors. But the way that you can sort of combat this is sort of keyword hack things, right? Where you look at the job description, and if there are prerequisite skills that are listed, make sure those are represented on your resume and things like that.
Yeah, and to build on what Rohan said, like in terms of keyword hacking, it's not enough to just rephrase it. Maybe with today's fairly intelligent AI it is, but you really want to like match the words.
Jay, anything else about applicant tracking systems?
Not on the HR side, so I can't speak much on that, but I can see that the application that landed on the manager's hand for final interview are fraction of what in the application pool. So I'm sure someone's doing the heavy lifting, either it's AI or an HR. But what I can say is, like company like us, we have tons of offices and tons of different centers and locations. So the application you submit might not land with the right HR or the right center. You're applying for a general position, it's going to go fly over to a different center. So it's difficult to match up. So keep applying. So there are different positions at different offices. Keep applying to all of them, and different HRs will end up reviewing them. That increases your chance of getting a job with your dream company. So don't just apply once and then be done with it.
Persistence is important for sure. So we have a question here about cover letters, and actually this is a great one too, because there's definitely lots of different schools of thought on cover letters. So we'd love to get each of your views on just any advice for cover letters. I probably would add to that question, do they matter? Do they not? Controversial question here. Who would like to start with that one?
All right, I can jump in.
Sure.
I think every company is going to have their own policy here, but my general take is that, especially for large organizations, I was saying this earlier, right? They get so many applications. You'd be lucky if they read your resume, let alone a cover letter, right? And so I wouldn't spend a lot of time on it. That being said, if you do try some of these backdoor approaches we were talking about, where you go direct to the hiring manager or job poster, you send them an email on their work email, that's basically your chance to, really personalize your brand and stand out. And so I would invest more time in those types of approaches.
Great. Brian, cover letters, yay or nay?
I would rather see a portfolio than a cover letter. Especially, so if you're submitting through an application portal, sometimes there's a chance to attach one, sometimes there's not. I wouldn't bother. If you do send an email, like a backdoor email, like Rohan said, then your email is the cover letter. Don't write me an email about yourself and then also attach a cover letter, right? Write the email the way you would sort of write a cover letter, have some personal information about you and your own brand, and then attach a resume and attach a portfolio.
Yeah, and Ed, as somebody who looks at all the resumes, what do you think about cover letters?
Well, I would say spend more time on the resume itself. That would be better use of your time.
Anything else to add, Jay?
Letters are nice if you have time for that, but just trying to apply as many positions as you can, and that would be more important than cover letter, in my opinion.
All right. So some mixed things, sometimes good, sometimes don't need it. So this is kind of, and again, keep letting those questions come in. We talked a lot about referrals, and another really common question is really just the how to. Is it just the direct ask? What is sort of an effective way to get that referral, given the importance of the referrals?
What works for me and what I enjoy the most when people reach out to me on LinkedIn is simply asking, what do you do, and start a conversation from there, paying interest to this person's specialties, like how do you get to this position and what can we learn from your experience. So the building a connection, sharing a common ground to show that you're actually interested in what they're doing, and people are more willing to open up when they found out that you actually like the same hobby that I like, or enjoying to do stuff outside of work, then you can build a connection, build a bond. So I think that's important for me.
Finding that commonality. What else would you all say is some ways to get that referral?
One of the things for me is that I like to get to know you a little better before I refer you. So try to catch me for lunch, or dinner or breakfast, but let's meet up and talk and tell me about who you are and what you've worked on. I certainly can't do that for everybody. I can't be constantly running out of the office for lunchtime, but that can also take you to the next level if you start with the things Jay said about being try to form a personal connection before you just, but don't wait too long to ask. Like, make it clear what you want. Be like, hey, I want this position, hoping you can give me a referral. Maybe it's just a Zoom call. Can we talk and chat about myself real quick? And because I have to write a little paragraph when I write a referral. It's like, do you know this person? Like, no. It's not as good of a referral as, yes, I do know them. Like, they went to UC Berkeley a couple years after me. Like, we chatted. This is what they worked on. It's a better referral.
Mm-hmm. And that's a great point, is at least being upfront, like that is something that you're hoping for, but then to take that time to make the connection and have the conversation. Rohan, what would you say about getting referrals?
Yeah, I was just going to echo the same point. When you fill out the form internally, I've worked at Google, Lyft, a bunch of big companies. It's a pretty detailed form. You have to provide a fair amount of information about why this candidate would be a good fit for the role. And me personally, I will never write a referral if I don't vouch for that candidate, right? So, you're going to have to somehow get my attention and, meet and convince me, right, that you're a good fit for this role. And it's probably going to take a couple of meetings. It's really just not a good look to willy-nilly be putting in referrals. I know some people do it, but I would find another way in. Maybe just go direct to the hiring manager, like I was saying, and impress them instead of manufacturing an artificial referral from somebody you don't know very well.
Mm-hmm. And Ed, any other advice for seeking referrals?
Not anything specific. I guess I would just say that if you know the person, then you can get a referral. But then if you don't know the person, it's going to be difficult. So I don't see how you can get around that. Yeah. So I echo Rohan's comment that it's pretty hard to get a referral.
Got to connect with the person.
Yeah.
Great. All right. So I'm being mindful of time here. These discussions always go so fast. So we will have our final question here, and we'll go through each of the panelists again. And really, it's just kind of any sort of final tip, strategy, insight, just that closing question that you have for folks on how they can achieve their career goals, particularly in this current job market. So let's see. Let's go. We'll kind of go in the reverse order of what we just went to. So Ed, we'll start with you.
Okay, me. Okay, good. Okay. Okay. So when I graduated from my PhD program, one of my advisor is the department chair of EECS, and then he gave me this advice, and I want to pass it along to the audience. He told me, Ed, okay, whatever you want to do, pick the best company that does it. Okay, and I didn't realize why at that time. So I went in the industry, I bounced around, and what I realized is that what he said is absolutely true. And then the reason is that in the boom times, a lot of companies, they want to expand, they want to get into the field, and they will try to have a side business, and they will try to hire you, and they pay a lot of money to hire you. Okay, but then the problem is that in tech, there's the bus, right? When the bus comes, they'll get rid of all the funky stuff. Okay, then problem that your career will be just crash, right? So in order to avoid that, you want to work for the best company. Whatever you want to, the professor told me, whatever you want to do doesn't matter. You have to work for the best company in that field. So that's my advice to the audience.
Great, thank you. And Rohan, what's your final advice?
Yeah, I'm pretty blunt, so bear with me, but I will say that I think Berkeley as a whole is very risk averse. And this is improving over time, but back when I was there, everybody wanted to go to Microsoft, Google. The big companies are always going to be there. I think what you need to be optimizing for at this stage in your career is velocity of learning, right? That's the number one thing to optimize for. And so, I made this mistake myself in that I've been at big companies, and I went to a big company after Google, or after Berkeley, I went to Google, and, you learn a lot, but the incremental velocity, I think, that you get from being at an earlier stage organization you're just going to be thrust into various situations that are going to test you. And I think, you're going to come out on the other side stronger. You're going to have actual battle scars. You're going to push stuff. And I think you're going to always have that large company route down the road if that's something that you want, right? Stability, cash compensation, these are all things that large companies offer. But that's my push for the overall community. And I think, if I were to go back and do things over again, I definitely would have joined a startup out of Berkeley.
Thank you for that. I love that velocity of learning for sure. Jay, what's your final advice?
I would say definitely be patient, be passionate about what you do, and show the recruiter that you're passionate about the opportunity and the career that you're going to be working on. Being on this side of the table right now, and I have interviewed a dozen students so far in every recruiting seasons, and I realize I can easily tell if a student is, they like what they do, or they're just there for the interview. They don't care about the product, they don't care about the technology, versus students who can easily go on and be very enthusiastic about what they like to achieve at your company. So you can fairly easily tell that. And that's what the company is looking for. If you're missing a certain skill set, that's okay. We'll train you. Most companies have that opportunity, and they have resource to help you gain the knowledge you need to do your job. But if you're not passionate about your job, you can't survive there either. So be passionate, and you'll get it.
Yeah. Having that passion and that curiosity for the work is important. All right, Brian, you got the final say on this.
I think my final piece of advice to everybody is that it only gets better as time goes on. My first job search was very hard. Out of undergrad, just back in 2010, the economy was still recovering from the economic crisis, the mortgage crash of 2008. And it took me 6 months to find an engineering job, and then I had to go back to school to find another engineering job. And this most recent job search, I actually had several companies reach out to me and say, hey, we want, we saw on LinkedIn that you're available. We want you to work for us. And so it gets better and better. And so my advice to everybody is to, for every single job you have, learn everything you can from it, echoing Rohan's statement, maximize your velocity of learning, and don't worry too much if it's don't be down if it's not your dream job, right? I'm sure everybody has this aspiration, I want to work for X company. I want to work for Google, SpaceX, Microsoft. You can get there. They're always going to be there. The smaller, younger companies, the steps along the way will teach you tons of things. And your job search space grows as you get older and you get more skilled. So always be sort of looking forwards and thinking about the future, and don't be upset if you don't get, fresh out of school, you're getting a senior engineering job at some company. It's not how it happens. I think a lot of people want to jump into these very experienced roles, and my advice is to enjoy the path. I loved working for the oven company. I loved working for Tesla, and now I'm at Figure, and it's my favorite of all of them so far. So it gets better. It's more and more fun, and there's always something to look forward to.
Love it. So much optimism. Thank you all so much for your time. Let's all give Ed and Rohan and Jay and Brian a little virtual round of applause here through our Zoom reactions. So definitely feel free to link in with these people on LinkedIn, find them. And panelists, if you can go ahead and put your contact information in the chat so people can follow up with you. Always like to use this opportunity to build those connections. And I look forward to more conversations, and thank you all for being here. And that's all we got. Thank you so much. I'll stop the recording here.